"Did you think you could defeat me, human?" said the alien woman. Then she realized she was wrong. The galaxy feared the Volari Empire. For hundreds of years, no one had ever dared challenge them. Their warriors were fast, clever, and cruel. Their ships could destroy entire planets, and their minds were sharp like blades. Every race whispered about the Volari power, and few survived battles with them. Humans were considered weak. Their home world was harsh, full of storms and strong animals. Everyone thought humans would be easy to destroy if caught. Ethan Cole was one of those humans. He had fought in many skirmishes, traveled through dark space, and survived attacks that would have killed others. But now he was trapped on a ruined planet, his body battered, his armor broken. The ground beneath him was cracked, and the wind carried ash from old fires. They could see the remains of ships scattered across the plains. Volari scouts had hunted him for days before capturing him. They had no mercy, but Ethan had survived, and that made them curious. He woke in a dim room inside a Volari transport ship. The walls glowed faintly with purple light, and the air smelled metallic and cold. He was tied to a small chair. His arms and legs hurt. He could feel bruises forming across his body. The air was thick with tension. He listened and heard the soft hum of the ship engines. The room was quiet, but he knew he was not alone. Guards moved silently outside the door. The door opened slowly. A tall figure entered. She was unlike any creature Ethan had ever seen. Her skin shimmered faintly, almost like liquid silver. Her eyes were sharp and glowing yellow. She moved with grace, but there was power in every step. He was the Valerie commander. Her name was Valera. She stopped in front of Ethan and studied him carefully. Her gaze felt like it could cut through steel. Ethan did not flinch. He did not look away. He simply met her eyes. "So, human," Valera said, her voice smooth but full of authority. "You survived. You were not expected to last more than a few hours. Tell me, did you think you could defeat me?" Ethan smiled faintly. His lips were dry, and he was tired, but he met her question calmly. "I never thought about defeating you," he said quietly. "I just wanted to survive." Valera laughed. It was not a happy laugh. It was sharp and cruel. "Survival," she said. "Humans are so weak. Your species lives on a planet full of storms and animals, and you call that training? You are nothing compared to the Volari." Ethan did not answer. He knew words were useless. She wanted to see fear, begging, weakness. He had none. Valera walked closer. She moved slowly, examining him like a predator sizing up prey. "You will answer my questions," she said. "Your species fascinates me, yet I do not understand it. Why do you fight? Why do you survive when everything around you is so fragile?" "You are curious, human. I will find your secrets." Ethan studied her too. He noticed the small movements of her hands, the way her eyes shifted slightly when she thought. He tried to understand her, as she tried to understand him. She was not just strong. She was smart, clever, and proud. She believed in her power completely. She believed that nothing could stop her. Guards entered the room carrying small devices. They placed them near Ethan and started to run tests. Small shocks, sensors, and scans tried to detect weakness. Ethan endured every test. His body screamed with pain. But he did not cry. He did not scream. He did not give them anything. Valera watched him with growing curiosity. "Most humans would have broken," she said. "But not you. How can that be?" "You are supposed to be fragile. Your species is supposed to be weak." Ethan breathed slowly. He looked at her. "We are not weak," he said. "We survive because we must. We survive because giving up is not an option." Valera tilted her head. She did not smile. She did not speak. She studied him, turning his words over in her mind. She was used to enemies begging for mercy, crying for life. But this human, he was calm. He had courage. He had something she did not understand. The transport ship rocked slightly. Alarms began to ring softly. Valerie guards rushed to the bridge. Valerie looked at Ethan and said, "Stay here. Do not move. I will return when this is finished." She left the room and the door closed behind her with a hiss. Ethan was alone now. He could hear the ship hum, the faint movements of guards, and the sound of distant engines. He closed his eyes briefly, thinking about the humans left on his homeworld, thinking about the battles he had survived. He thought about his family, his friends, his planet. He thought about why humans never gave up, even when everything seemed impossible. Hours passed. Guards came and went, observing him, scanning him. He learned their routines. He learned when they slept, when they walked, when they talked. He paid attention to everything. Humans could survive anything if they learned fast, adapted, and waited for the right moment. Valira returned eventually. She looked tired, but her pride remained. She had questions. "Human," she said.
I have studied many races.
I have fought many warriors. You are different.
"Tell me, what makes humans so strange? Why do you survive while others die?" Ethan opened his mouth, but he thought carefully. He did not lie, but he also did not give away anything he should not. "I cannot explain it to you," he said. "I only know we survive because we must. We fight because we care. We endure because stopping is not an option." Valira stared at him. Her eyes softened slightly. She had never heard a soldier speak like this. Every other species cried, begged, or cursed. Humans were calm. Humans did not complain. Humans did not give up. They endured. That night, Ethan could not sleep. The ship rocked gently. The lights dimmed, and the guards rotated shifts. He thought about the galaxy, about the Volari, about the humans who had been hunted, and about the ones who survived. He knew that one day humans would fight back. They always did. They had to. Valira watched him silently from outside the cell. She had left the door slightly open, unseen. She wanted to see what the human would do when given a choice. Would he run? Would he attack? Would he beg? Nothing happened. Ethan remained calm, focused, and aware. Days passed. Ethan was fed minimally, but he survived. Valira continued her studies, but she began to respect the human. Not fully, but she noticed something. Humans had patience. Humans had courage. Humans had endurance. And Valira had never faced an enemy like that. Then one day, a disturbance shook the ship. Alarms screamed loudly. Ethan felt the floor shake. He was strapped to the chair, but he noticed the guards running frantically. Valira's face appeared at the doorway. She looked furious. Something was wrong. "What is happening?" Ethan asked calmly. The guards did not answer. They ran past him, shouting. Valira's eyes met his. In that moment, she realized something terrifying. She had underestimated him. She had assumed humans were weak. She had assumed he would break. She had assumed her pride was enough to control him. Ethan did not move. He only watched. He had survived too long, observed too much, and learned too many things. He waited. He knew that patience was part of survival. He knew that strength was more than power. He knew that humans were never truly defeated, not by strength, not by fear, not by pride. Valira looked at him and whispered almost to herself, "Did you think you could defeat me, human?" Ethan smiled faintly, and in his calm voice he said, "I am not trying to defeat you. I am trying to survive." For the first time, Valira did not laugh. She looked at him carefully, and something in her changed. The human was not like any warrior she had faced before. He was not just a soldier. He was patient, clever, and unbroken. The ship continued to move through the stars. Outside, distant planets and moons passed silently. Inside, Ethan waited. He endured. He survived. And somewhere deep inside, Valira knew that this human was dangerous. Not because of weapons or fleets, but because of something she could not fight. She had never met patience, endurance, and courage like this. She had never met a human. And she would remember him. Dodd's days passed aboard the Valeri ship.
Ethan Cole remained calm and alert.
He had learned the schedule of the guards, the shifts of the crew, and the sounds of the ship. He could tell when the engines changed speed and when the alarms were false. He had nothing but his mind and patience, but humans were good at surviving with very little. Every hour that passed was another hour closer to opportunity. Valyra continued to study him. She visited him daily, asking questions and observing his reactions. She wanted to know what made humans endure so much. She had expected begging, anger, or fear, but Ethan gave none of these. Instead, he spoke calmly, even when he was hurt. "Human," Valyra said one day, her yellow eyes sharp. "You are unusual. Most of your kind would have given up long ago. You have endured tests that would break others. Tell me, what is your secret?" Ethan looked at her, his face calm. "We do not give up," he said simply. "We survive because stopping is not an option. We endure because if we do not, everything is lost. That is all." Valyra frowned. She did not like that answer. She wanted more. She wanted a weakness, a crack in his mind, something she could exploit, but she found nothing. Every word he spoke carried calm, focus, and a hint of patience she could not match. Her pride made her impatient. She had defeated countless species before. She had crushed armies with ease. She had never failed. Yet this human challenged her in a way she could not fight. It was not his strength or skill. It was his mind, his endurance, and his patience. While she studied him, Ethan observed her too. He noticed how she moved, the way her eyes scanned the room, the tension in her posture when she was frustrated. She was strong, clever, and proud, but she had one flaw. She underestimated the small, patient, and seemingly weak. Ethan remembered this. Humans always survived when others underestimated them. One evening, the ship passed near a small gas planet. The view from the observation deck was beautiful, with clouds swirling and lightning flashing in the distance. Valyra allowed Ethan to look through the observation window. She wanted to see if he would panic or show fear. He did neither. Instead, he watched calmly, taking in the storm, the clouds, and the spinning gases. "You are curious about everything," Valyra said. "Your species always looks, always learns. Why?" Ethan smiled faintly. "We must," he said. "We survive by learning. We survive by seeing danger before it comes. If we stop learning, we die." Valyra studied him. She had never thought about learning this way. Most species fought with weapons, strength, or fear. Humans fought differently. They used their minds as much as their bodies. They endured, observed, and planned. She had underestimated them. She did not like admitting it. Her pride burned inside her. The guards grew wary. They began to notice that Ethan was calm when others would panic. They began to talk quietly among themselves, whispering about the strange human who did not cry, who did not beg, who did not break. Some feared him. Others thought it was impossible for a human to be this patient and clever. Valyra overheard them. She frowned. Her pride told her she should punish them for doubting her empire, but she remained silent. She could not deny what she saw. Ethan Cole had survived when no one else could. He had endured tests, injuries, and fear. He had survived because humans never gave up. As the days went by, Valyra began to talk to Ethan more often. She asked about Earth, about storms, about gravity, about the animals and challenges humans faced. Ethan answered carefully, giving enough truth to satisfy her curiosity without giving away anything that could endanger his people. He spoke of giant storms that could tear buildings apart, of predators that hunted relentlessly, of harsh winters where survival was uncertain. He spoke of humans fighting among themselves but always finding ways to survive. Valyra listened, fascinated. She did not expect humans to be so resilient, so clever, so patient. One day Valyra brought him to a larger chamber. It was full of alien devices and screens. She wanted to show him something, or perhaps to intimidate him. She waved her hand, and images of destroyed planets and burning cities appeared.
"This is what we do to those who oppose us," she said.
"Your kind will die. Nothing can stop us. And yet you endure." Ethan looked at the images calmly. He did not flinch. He did not panic. He simply nodded. "We survive anyway," he said quietly. "We adapt. We learn. We endure. That is how humans last." Violyra's pride flared. She could not accept that one human could survive while entire species fell. She wanted to see weakness. She wanted to see fear. She wanted to see anything to prove that humans were weak. But she found nothing. Every glance, every word, every movement from Ethan showed calm and control. She began to question herself. She had never faced an enemy like this. She had never fought someone who did not fear her, who did not beg, who did not break. It was unsettling. Her mind worked quickly, calculating possibilities, strategies, and threats. Ethan Cole was a small human, one man, but she realized he was dangerous in ways she could not fight. Ethan, meanwhile, observed everything. He watched the guards, the devices, the ship systems. He learned their schedules, their habits, their weaknesses. Humans survived not by being stronger than others, but by knowing the environment, adapting to it, and waiting for the right moment. Every day gave him more understanding, more opportunity, more hope. Valeera tried to assert control. She ordered harsher tests, more scans, and deeper examinations. Ethan endured everything silently. Sometimes his body hurt, but his mind was steady. He learned to breathe through pain, to stay calm, to focus on every detail. Valery soldiers began to notice. Some were amazed, some were scared. One night a ship-wide alert sounded. Valery systems detected something outside the fleet. Valeera rushed to the bridge, her eyes sharp, her mind calculating. Ethan remained in his chamber, calm. He listened to the sounds, studied the shifts in power, and realized that this was his chance. Humans always found ways to survive by being patient, by observing, by acting when the moment was right. Valeera returned later, her face tense. The disturbance was minor, nothing that threatened the fleet, but it had shaken her. She looked at Ethan, and for the first time she felt doubt. He had survived everything she had thrown at him. He had endured pain, fear, and isolation. And now, she realized, he had the patience to wait for the right moment to act. "Human," she said quietly, almost to herself. "You endure. You survive. Why? Why do you never break?" Ethan looked at her, his eyes calm. "We survive because we must. We endure because stopping is not an option. We do not break because we have no choice but to go on." Valeera stared at him. She had studied warriors, soldiers, and leaders for centuries. She had broken them all. But this one human had not broken. He had endured. He had survived. And in that endurance, she saw strength she had never faced before. As the days turned into weeks, Valeera began to change. She no longer saw Ethan as just a prisoner. She saw him as a soldier, clever, patient, and enduring. She still planned to use him, to study him, but deep inside, she knew he was unlike any enemy she had ever faced. Humans were more than she had imagined. Humans endured, humans adapted, and humans survived in ways that defied logic. Ethan, meanwhile, continued to observe, to learn, and to prepare. He knew that humans survived not by strength alone, but by endurance, by patience, and by knowing when to act. One day he would act. But not yet. For now, he waited, calm and unbroken. Valeera watched him silently. She wanted to understand him. She wanted to know why humans never gave up. And she knew that she would have to respect this human, whether she admitted it or not. The galaxy moved on outside the ship, full of battles, empires, and chaos. Inside, a human soldier waited, endured, and survived. And slowly, unknowingly, he began to change the way his captor thought. Valeera, the proud Valeri commander, realized that humans were not weak. Humans were clever, patient, and strong in ways she could not fight. She had underestimated them. She had underestimated him. And for the first time she feared the human, not for what he had done, but for what he might do. And Ethan Cole, calm and observant, continued to wait. He endured. He survived. And the galaxy would soon see that humans were never truly defeated, not by strength, not by weapons, not by pride. Humans endured. Ethan Cole continued to observe everything aboard the Valari ship. Every door, every hallway, every control panel, and every guard movement became part of his understanding. He had nothing but his mind and patience, but humans were masters of using small details to survive. He remembered how his ancestors had survived harsh planets, storms, and predators by noticing what others ignored. Patience was his greatest weapon. Baelira continued to study him daily. She asked questions, observed his movements, and sometimes simply watched him sit quietly. She was proud, confident, and clever, but she could not understand how a single human could endure so much without fear or complaint. She had fought warriors stronger than him, yet none had survived tests like Ethan. Slowly, doubt began to creep into her mind. One day, Valera brought Ethan to a control chamber. It was a room full of glowing panels, buttons, and screens that displayed the positions of ships and planets. She wanted him to see the power of the Valari fleet and perhaps feel awe. She expected fear. Instead, Ethan looked calmly at every detail. He noticed patterns, weaknesses, and timing of systems that Violira did not even think could be noticed.
"Human," Violira said, "you are always watching, always learning."
"Do you see everything?" Ethan nodded slightly. "I notice what is important." Small details make a difference. That is how humans survive. Baelira frowned. She did not like the thought of a human understanding her systems, but she could not deny it. His calmness and observation were impressive. She turned away, hiding her concern. She would not show fear. She was a Valari commander, proud and unbroken. Over the next few days, Ethan quietly began to test the systems. He watched how the doors opened and closed, how the security panels worked, and how the ship responded to different commands. He studied the timing of the guards, when they changed shifts, and when the control panels had brief moments of inactivity. Every detail built a picture in his mind. The Valari believed humans were weak. They thought patience and careful observation were not weapons. Ethan knew differently. Humans had survived death worlds, storms, and predators because they noticed what others ignored. Every small system flaw, every habit of the guards, every weak moment in the ship was an opportunity. And Ethan was ready to wait for it. One evening, Balaran came to the chamber to ask him questions. She was proud of her fleet, confident in her empire, and certain that humans could not escape. She spoke of planets destroyed, ships crushed, and enemies defeated. Ethan listened, silently observing her reactions, noting what she said and what she omitted. "Do humans always endure like this?" she asked finally. "Or is it only you?" Ethan thought carefully. "We endure because we must. Not everyone survives but those who do learn. We survive by noticing details, by waiting, and by acting at the right moment. That is how humans last." Valyra studied him carefully. She was impressed and frustrated at the same time. She wanted him to fear her, to beg for mercy, to break under pressure. But he had none of those things. He endured. He observed. He waited. Over the next week, Ethan began to act subtly. He did not rush. He did not attack. He simply tested minor systems when guards were distracted. He learned how doors could be unlocked, how power panels could be reset, and how sensors could be bypassed. Each discovery was small, but it built toward something greater. Patience was his strength, and humans knew that the smallest details often decided life and death. One night, a small alarm sounded. A routine check from the ship's main systems. Ethan felt the vibration through the floor. He noticed the control lights flicker, the patterns of sound, and the shift of power in the room. A human would understand this was normal, but Ethan realized that with careful timing he could manipulate it slightly without being noticed. He waited, studying the next few cycles. He noted which guards walked near the panels, when the power briefly dropped in one section, and when the doors temporarily unlocked for maintenance. Humans had survived on planets with predators far more dangerous than the Valeri. Patience and timing were everything. Valeera noticed nothing. She continued to study him, asking questions, watching his endurance, but she did not realize he was slowly gaining control of small systems. She underestimated the human's cunning. She believed only power mattered. She had not yet learned that patience could be more dangerous than strength. Then one day, a small malfunction occurred in one of the side corridors. Lights flickered, doors opened without command, and sensors gave false readings. Guards rushed to fix it, blaming the ship's systems. Ethan observed quietly, noting every reaction, every correction, and every delay. He had not caused it directly, but he understood how small problems could be turned into opportunities. He realized that Valari's systems relied on precision. One small disruption, if repeated, could create confusion. One small trick, if timed correctly, could make the guards doubt their sensors. Patience, observation, and small actions could create the first cracks in a seemingly perfect empire. Valeera grew more curious about him. She asked questions about human strategy, about survival on planets, and about how humans learn to adapt. Ethan answered carefully, revealing the philosophy of humans without giving away secrets. He spoke of storms that tested humans for days, predators that required clever traps, and endless challenges that forced humans to think fast and survive.
Humans are clever, Valeera said quietly.
But can you truly defeat the Valari? Your kind is small.
Your weapons are weak. Your fleets are nothing.
Ethan smiled faintly. Humans do not always fight with strength alone. We survive by learning, by noticing, by waiting, and by acting when the time is right. That is how we endure. That is how humans win when no one expects it. Valeera stared at him, her pride and curiosity both growing. She had faced countless enemies, but none had survived her tests like this human. She realized slowly that strength alone was not the measure of power. Endurance, patience, and intelligence could be just as deadly.
Over the next few days, Ethan quietly experimented with more systems.
He learned how to temporarily disable minor security panels, how to delay sensor readings, and how to subtly mislead guards without being caught.
Every action was small, almost invisible, but it built toward a larger plan.
Patience was a human's weapon. Endurance was a human's shield. Observation was the human's mind. Then, a small incident shook the ship. A minor external sensor detected an approaching fleet. Alarms sounded briefly, lights flashed, and guards rushed to their posts. Ethan noticed that the guards were tense, that Valeera's eyes showed brief concern, and that small mistakes were being made in the chaos. He realized that with careful timing he could use these mistakes to his advantage. He waited. Humans survived by observing, by calculating, and by acting at the right moment. He would not rush. He would not make mistakes. Every detail mattered. Every second counted. Valeera studied him quietly, sensing his growing understanding of the ship's systems. She began to wonder if her pride had blinded her. She had assumed humans were weak. She had assumed this one human would break. She had assumed that her fleet was unbeatable. Now, she began to doubt. Ethan's patience and observation had turned the situation into something she had never faced. One human had quietly begun to manipulate the environment without breaking any rules, without rushing, without revealing his plan. And she had not noticed. That night, Ethan rested quietly in his cell. He knew that survival depended on endurance. He knew that humans had survived harsh planets, endless storms, and predators far stronger than Valari warriors. He had nothing but patience, observation, and subtle action, but he also had everything. He knew that when the time came, humans could turn even small opportunities into victory. Valeera looked at him one last time before leaving the cell. She sensed something different. He was calm, patient, clever, and enduring. She realized slowly that humans were not weak. She realized that this one human could survive anything, even the power of the Valari. She did not know yet that he was already planning his first move. The galaxy continued to turn outside the ship. Stars passed silently, and distant planets moved in their orbits. Inside, a human soldier observed, endured, and prepared. He had learned, waited, and subtly acted.
He had patience, and patience was a weapon.
He had endurance, and endurance was a shield. He had knowledge, and knowledge was power. Valera, proud and clever, had begun to notice the change. She did not yet understand the full danger, but she knew one thing. This human was unlike any enemy she had ever faced. He survived when others would break. He endured when others would fail. And slowly, she feared the day when patience and endurance would turn into action. Ethan Cole continued to watch, to learn, and to wait. Humans survived when others did not, and he knew that one day his chance would come. The galaxy would see that even one human patient, clever, and enduring could challenge the might of an empire. Ethan Cole had waited patiently for days. Every guard, every door, every system aboard the Valerie ship had been studied, noted, and quietly tested. Small failures had been introduced into the ship's systems without anyone noticing. Lights flickered, sensors misread signals, doors opened at the wrong times. It was subtle, almost invisible. But Ethan knew that these tiny disruptions would grow into something larger when the moment came. Patience, observation, and endurance were human weapons. And now, the first cracks had appeared. Valera paced in her chamber. She had begun to notice small problems on her ship, minor alarms that should not have sounded, doors that briefly locked or unlocked at the wrong times, sensor readings that were slightly off. She had initially dismissed them as technical glitches, but now she sensed something more. She had faced rebellion, sabotage, and spies before, but nothing like this. A quiet, clever presence seemed to be working inside her own fleet, and she feared it might be a human. Ethan remained calm in his cell. He watched the guards, the system responses, and the small disturbances he had introduced. He had not acted rashly. He had not risked detection. But he had prepared. He had waited. Humans survived by waiting. Humans thrived on patience. The moment would come, and when it did, he would act decisively. One day, Valera came to speak with him. She was proud, clever, and strong, but there was tension in her posture. She asked him questions about human strategy, about survival, about endurance. Ethan answered carefully, giving enough truth to satisfy her curiosity without giving away his plans. His calmness unnerved her. Every word he spoke was measured, precise, and confident.
Human, Valera said quietly. Your kind surprises me.
You endure everything. You survive everything. Why do you not break under fear or pain? Ethan looked at her steadily. Humans endure because we must. We survive because giving up is not an option. We wait, we learn, and when the moment comes, we act. That is how humans last. Valera frowned. She had never met anyone like him. She had fought countless warriors, commanders, and strategists. None had endured tests like this human. None had remained calm under pressure. None had studied their environment so carefully. She realized slowly that she had underestimated humans. She had assumed weakness, and now she was beginning to see strength. That night, the ship passed near a cluster of asteroids. Ethan noticed patterns in the ship's navigation systems that the Valari had not considered. He could manipulate small controls to create delays, redirect power, and subtly confuse the sensors. Every action was small, almost unnoticeable, but it disrupted the fleet's precision. He smiled faintly. Humans survived by noticing what others ignored. The smallest details often made the largest difference. The next day, a series of small malfunctions began across the ship. Lights flickered, doors opened at the wrong time, and minor alarms went off in random sections. Guards rushed to respond, but they could not locate the cause.
Dales,
Confusion spread quietly through the ship. Ethan watched calmly, taking note of every reaction, every mistake. He had not acted openly, but his influence had begun. Patience and observation were yielding results. Valera grew uneasy. She had fought wars, crushed fleets, and broken rebellions, but she had never seen a single human manipulate events so subtly and effectively. She began to realize that Ethan's strength was not in his weapons or body, but in his mind, his patience, and his endurance. Slowly, fear began to creep into her prideful heart. That evening, Valera visited Ethan again. She spoke quietly, almost to herself. "Did you think you could defeat me, human?" she asked. Ethan smiled faintly. "I am not trying to defeat you," he said calmly. "I am trying to survive, and humans survive by waiting, learning, and acting at the right moment." Valera stared at him. She had underestimated him. She had assumed a single human could not challenge her or her fleet. Now she realized the truth. Strength alone was not enough to control a human who endured, observed, and waited. Patience was a weapon she had never faced.
Over the next few days, Ethan subtly increased his influence on the ship.
He learned how to reroute minor power flows, how to manipulate sensors to mislead guards, and how to exploit small timing errors. Every action was carefully measured. He did not risk detection, but he built the foundation for something greater. Humans survived by understanding their environment, exploiting opportunities, and acting when the moment was right. Then, a human fleet arrived. It appeared suddenly, without warning, in a sector the Volari thought secure. Valera's fleet detected it, and alarms rang throughout the ships. Chaos spread quickly. Guards rushed to their posts. Ships scrambled and commands were shouted, but confusion and errors slowed the Volari response. Ethan had prepared the environment. Small delays, misreads, and errors compounded with the sudden arrival of the human fleet. The Empire's precision faltered. Valera watched in shock. Her eyes widened as her calculations failed. Her ships could not coordinate. Her weapons fired late. Her fleet was disorganized. She realized slowly, painfully, that she had underestimated humans. She had assumed strength in numbers would always prevail. She had been wrong. The human endurance she had dismissed as weakness was now a force she could not control. Ethan, calm and steady, was freed during the chaos. He moved through the ship with ease, unnoticed because the guards were overwhelmed by the sudden problems and distractions. Every observation he had made, every system flaw he had studied, allowed him to move quickly and effectively. Patience and observation had created the opportunity he needed. Humans thrived in moments like this. Humans endured until the right moment to act arrived. Valera confronted him on the bridge. Her pride burned, her eyes sharp, but her words were heavy with disbelief.
How? How could a single human do this?
My fleet, my empire. Ethan met her gaze steadily. Humans survive because we endure. We observe. We wait. And when the moment comes, we act. That is how we win, even when others think we are weak. She realized the truth. She had underestimated him, underestimated his kind. Strength alone was not enough. Patience, endurance, and clever observation had turned the tide. Her pride, her confidence in her fleet had not been enough to stop a single human who understood his environment and waited for the right moment. The battle continued outside, but inside, Valera had understood something critical. Humans were dangerous in ways she had never imagined, not because of weapons, but because of endurance, patience, and intelligence. She had faced many enemies, but she had never faced one like Ethan Cole. One human, patient and clever, had outmatched her fleet in strategy without even striking a blow directly. As the fight raged outside, Ethan moved through the ship, ensuring that human forces could gain control of critical points. His actions were subtle, but decisive. He had not acted rashly, had not rushed, and had not revealed his plan. Patience had been his shield, observation had been his weapon, and endurance had been his strategy. Humans survived in situations where others could not. And this was one of those moments. Valera watched from the bridge. powerless to stop him. She had underestimated him from the beginning. She had assumed that humans were weak, that patience was useless, that endurance was meaningless. She had been wrong. Slowly, painfully, she realized that humans were strong, not because of strength or weapons, but because of endurance, patience, and cleverness. Ethan's calm presence on the ship had caused the Empire's precision to falter. Small actions, careful observations, and patience had created a ripple that turned into a wave. Human ingenuity had exploited the slightest errors and small weaknesses in Valari's systems. The Empire's greatest strengths had been undone not by fleet size but by a single human's patience and cleverness. Finally, the human fleet gained control of key areas. The Valari ships faltered, their command broken. Valyra stood on the bridge, witnessing her fleet's disorganization, her empire's failure. She realized fully that humans were not weak. Humans survived, endured, and acted in ways the Valari could not predict. One human had turned her pride and power against her without even using force directly. She looked at Ethan, standing calmly, unbroken, and confident. He had survived tests, endured pain, observed every detail, and waited for the right moment. Now he had acted, and the result was undeniable. She had been wrong about humans. She had been wrong about him. The galaxy outside would never see humans the same way again. She understood that strength alone could not measure power. Patience, endurance, and cleverness could achieve what fleets and weapons could not. He had faced an empire's finest, and one human had prevailed through observation, strategy, and patience. Valyra took a deep breath. She had lost this battle. She had been defeated not by strength, not by weapons, not by numbers, but by endurance, patience, and intelligence. She had underestimated humans. She had been wrong, and she would never make that mistake again. Ethan stood quietly watching the fleet stabilize under human command. His patience had turned into action, his observation had created opportunities, and his endurance had ensured success. Humans survived, humans endured. Humans were never truly defeated. And Valyra now knew the truth. The battle outside the Valari fleet continued, but inside Ethan Cole moved calmly. The human fleet had gained control of critical systems, and the Valari soldiers were confused. Orders were missed, weapons fired too late, and coordination broke down. Ethan had not rushed. He had not forced action. He had waited, observed, and acted at the perfect moment. Patience had turned into decisive power. Valyra stood on the bridge, her pride shaken. She had been defeated, not by numbers, not by weapons, but by a human who understood endurance, patience, and cleverness. Her mind raced, trying to understand what she had missed. Blaine doesn't shad. She realized slowly that she had underestimated humans from the start. Strength alone was not enough to defeat one who endured, observed, and waited for the right moment. How is this possible? She whispered, almost to herself. A single human, and my fleet. Ethan approached her quietly. He had moved through the chaos with careful observation and precise action. He did not threaten her with weapons. He did not shout commands. He simply stood, calm, confident, and unbroken. His presence alone carried the weight of human endurance.
Humans survive because we endure, he said calmly.
We observe, we wait, and when the moment comes, we act. That is how we win. That is how we survive. Valyra looked at him, her eyes wide with understanding. She had always relied on pride, skill, and numbers. She had never faced a being who could endure, observe, and wait so effectively. She had been wrong. Humans were not weak. They were patient, clever, and strong in ways she had not understood. The Valari soldiers slowly began to surrender. Their confidence had collapsed, and the human fleet pressed forward with precision. Ethan had not used force directly, but his preparation had allowed humans to take control. One human, patient and clever, had turned the tide of an entire fleet without even drawing a weapon. Valyra's pride burned, but she did not strike. She knew she could not. She had underestimated humans, and now she had to accept defeat. She realized that endurance, patience, and intelligence could match and even surpass raw power. She had fought many battles, defeated many enemies, but none like this. Ethan turned to her calmly. "I am not here to destroy you," he said. "I am here to survive. Humans do not fight for pride or conquest alone. We fight to protect, to endure, and to make sure we are never underestimated again." Valera listened quietly. She had always valued strength above all else. Now, she understood that humans were dangerous not because of weapons or fleets, but because of endurance, patience, and cleverness. One human had achieved what she had never expected. The battle outside ended as Valari's ship surrendered or retreated. The human fleet secured control of the area. Ethan moved through the ship, ensuring that order was restored. He did not seek revenge or power. He acted with purpose, calm, and careful observation. Humans survived because they endured, and now they had secured victory without unnecessary destruction. Valera was escorted to a secure chamber. She was not treated harshly. Humans did not fight with cruelty. They fought with purpose. She was alive, unharmed, but her pride had been humbled. She realized that humans survived by understanding, by patience, and by endurance. She had underestimated a single human, and it had cost her fleet. Ethan spoke to her one last time. "You have strength, skill, and pride," he said, "but humans endure when others fail. We survive when others break. Do not forget this. Do not underestimate us again."
Valera nodded slowly.
She understood fully now. Humans were clever, patient, and enduring. She had faced one, and it had been enough to change her understanding of strength. She would record this lesson for her people. Humans were not weak. They were dangerous, patient, and enduring. The galaxy beyond the ship moved on. Stars passed, planets rotated, and civilizations continued their struggles. But the story of one human enduring, observing, and acting at the perfect moment would be remembered. Humans had survived against impossible odds, and one soldier had proven that endurance and patience were the greatest weapons of all. Ethan returned to the human fleet. He was greeted not as a conqueror, but as a survivor, as one who had endured and acted with purpose. He did not boast. He did not seek glory. He had survived, and in surviving, he had changed the course of a battle, and perhaps the understanding of an entire empire. Valera watched quietly as he moved among his people. He had been defeated, but she had also learned. Humans survived because they endured. Humans survived because they observed and waited. Humans survived because they acted at the right moment, with patience and intelligence. She would never forget this lesson. The human fleet continued on its mission, stronger now, wiser now, and ready for the challenges ahead. One human had proven that endurance, patience, and cleverness could defeat even the mightiest fleets. The galaxy would never underestimate humans again. Ethan stood quietly looking at the stars. He thought about Earth, about his home planet, and about the humans who had survived against impossible odds before him. He thought about the battles yet to come and the challenges ahead. Patience, endurance, and careful observation would always guide him. Humans survived because they endured, and that endurance was now their greatest weapon. Valera remained in her chamber, reflecting on the battle. She had been proud, clever, and strong, but one human had shown her that these qualities alone were not enough. Endurance, patience, and careful observation could overcome even the greatest power. She understood now. Humans were not weak. They endured. They survived. And they acted when the time was right. Ethan Cole had changed her understanding of the galaxy. One human, patient and clever, had endured tests, observed every detail, waited for the right moment, and acted decisively. The Valeri Empire had learned that strength alone was not enough. Humans survived because they endured, and the galaxy would never forget it. As the fleet moved on, peace returned to the ship. Systems were restored, soldiers reorganized, and control returned to humans. Ethan did not seek revenge or conquest. He had survived, observed, and acted. He had proven that humans endured, and that was enough. Valera was left to record her lessons, to understand the new truth about humans. Strength, weapons, and numbers were not enough. Endurance, patience, and intelligence were the greatest tools in survival and victory. She had underestimated humans, and it had been her downfall. She would never forget this lesson. Ethan looked at the stars again. Humans had survived countless storms, death worlds, and impossible odds. He had endured, observed, and acted. One human had changed the outcome of a battle without force alone. Humans were clever, patient, and enduring. That was their strength. That was their power. That was why the galaxy would never underestimate them again. The battle was over. The Valerie fleet had been humbled. Valera had learned her lesson. And Ethan Cole, calm and enduring, had proven the truth of humanity. Patience, endurance, and cleverness were weapons stronger than fleets. Humans survived, humans endured, and humans would never be defeated when they refused to break. The galaxy would remember this day. One human had changed the course of events through patience, endurance, and intelligence. The Empire had been humbled. The lesson had been learned, and the story of human strength, not in weapons but in endurance, would spread across the stars. Ethan Cole returned to his people quietly, ready for the next challenge. He had survived, he had endured, and he had acted. The galaxy had witnessed that humans were more than they seemed. Patience, observation, and endurance had turned the impossible into victory. Humans survived because they endured, and that endurance was now their greatest weapon. And somewhere, Valera recorded her lessons carefully, understanding that humans were not weak. They survived, they endured, they observed, and they acted when the time was right. One human, patient and clever, had proven it to the galaxy, and she would never forget. The stars shone silently. The galaxy moved on, and humanity endured, patient, clever, and unbroken, ready to face whatever the future might bring.